Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Hammer. Today is Friday, August 1st, 2025. Boy, are we going to have fun today. Today, we're talking about your daily mortgage rate update, the only place on the web where we get together at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, talking about what's going on with rates and pricing. Remember, if you're here this morning, say good morning. If you're watching on the replay, go ahead and give me a hashtag replay in the comments. Let me know that you were here today. We're going to be talking about this morning's jobs data. We're going to dig deeper into some of the numbers. There's probably a little bit more to it than what you're going to see in some of the headlines. So we're going to talk more about that. And we're really going to talk about what the reaction was in markets. I will show you one thing that really surprised the daylights out of me and what this all means for rates as we head into next week. And of course, we'll talk about the weekend because it's Friday, TGIF, baby. It is Friday. So if you are here this morning, don't forget to smash that like button, tag an hello friend, share this post in a group on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe. Also, your comments help my engagement. Plus, I just love hearing from you. So if you're here this morning, say good morning. This is an interactive conversation, so be a part of the show. Nowhere else on the net that I know that you can actually be involved and talk about all this stuff real time. It's not just a video. You can actually be here with me and we talk about all of it. So if you would like a reminder to hop on and do just that, you can sign up at hmmr.io/reminder. We don't sell your information or use it for any nefarious purpose. I just send you out a text alert every morning at my own personal cost to which, believe it or not, it actually does start to add up because we have a bunch of people on there. Or you can use this cool QR code right there. And as far as QR codes go, you can press that right now, or you can take a screenshot of it, go back to your photos and use it, and it will work, which is very cool. Also, if you want a quick email each morning about what's going on with rates and pricing, feel free to sign up at ratelockadvice.com or use this other QR code. And if you would like our text alerts, all of the services, I'm not throwing shade at anybody. All of the services have gotten very expensive with this stuff. So if you don't want to look at the live market updates and you don't need the candlesticks and everything else, if you just want a quick reminder of, hey, here's what's going on for the day. Not even a reminder, but a quick posting of what's going on every morning. We send a text every morning, a text wrap up at the end of the day, and alerts when there is risk of reprices or when you kind of to notify you when you want to float because things might get better. So, and it's $7 a month. I just don't think that things have to always be expensive. Tell your friends. We've got, 1,300 people signed up. I'd love to have 13,000. So anyway, there you go. That's what we got going on this morning. If you're here this morning, say good morning. Let's say hi to the live folks. We're going to read through this list real quick. Mike Tebow, good morning, sir. James Mahan, Julie Lawrence, good to see you. Mallory Fodiatis, Amy Blauser, Randy Teagle, giddy up, sir. Charlie Badita, I haven't seen you in a while. I hope all is well, my friend. Rob Smith, Deb Dickinson, Angela Walters, great to have you here. Mike Morano, Amber Moser, Pat Tenney. Hi, Pat. Hi. I hope you are doing well these days. Rob Stewart, Kenny Rivard, Michael Love. Great to be all of you. Randy Tico says, be a part of the show. That's right, Randy. You tell him, man. Jerry Avila, good to see you, brother. Megan Bassell, Nicole Semerad, Tim Klyla. Great to have all of you here. Ron Siegel says, today is National Raspberry Cream Pie Day. Let's celebrate today's wonderful rate sheets with raspberry cream pie. I've never heard of raspberry cream pie. Has anybody else? I've heard of like banana cream pie, but I've never heard of raspberry. It sounds good. I like cream pie. Michael Walker, Leroy Romero, good to see you, Mike Brown. Great to have all of you here. So let's get into it. Matt Rasner, you squeaked in as I'm making the cut. So good for you. Good morning. All right, let's go over it. So this morning's jobs data did come in much lower than expected. If we take a look here, the 73,000 payroll gain, there we go. The 73,000 jobs created were much lower than forecasts for 100,000, was weaker than all but 2 of 76 forecasts on Bloomberg's survey. But there were a handful of projections at 75,000. So some people are recognizing that the labor market is drifting a little bit lower. As it says here, bond market likes the softer job figures. Now, the 2-year yield, we don't talk about the 2-year much. The 2-year is the one that is going to see the biggest move because it's a short-term bond, similar to the Fed funds rate being a short-term rate. Now, This part was interesting. We're going to come back to this. The quarter point cut in September back on the table, up to 60% from less than 40%. We're going to come back to that. That's actually over here, and that was 60% before. Now look at this, 75%. And yesterday that was below 40. That was below 40%. Look at this. Yesterday we ended the day 37.66%. This morning it's almost doubled. So we'll come back to that as well. But taking a look here at the actual data, this came in showing that the labor market is weakening. At first glance, the numbers would support the argument the labor market is slowing. Government employment declined. And I think that this has a lot to do with that and why the numbers are lower, potentially showing the effects of federal spending cuts. So the traders resume fully pricing in an October Fed rate cut. We'll come back to that one as well. So here's a key though, right? The revisions are huge. Private sector payrolls are revised to just 3,000 rise in June. July saw a pickup of 83,000. That's net another weak reading. Let's take a look here. So when we look at the actual release and the data as it came through by itself here, hold on. I'm going to pop on the screen because I want you all to see my pretty face. Let me adjust this here. Move that to here. Move that to here, and we'll bring this up a little bit. Okay, so this is the actual, the news release on the data, right? So we got to make it a little smaller so it fits on the screen. Come on. Oh, there we go. Okay. So taking a look here, there's some things we want to get into here. So they actually said in July, it was 73,000 jobs created. Now take a look though. I find this to be a huge difference. These are the revisions. So we can go back and look, we can go all the way back. I mean, you can go back and look years revisions, right? So for example, look at the way the revisions used to go in 2019. What happens is it's like the GDP data. We get the initial, but we only ever pay attention to the initial. We get the initial reading and then it gets revised 2 more times. Okay. So we look at the initial reading and, 75 became 62, 224 became 178, 164 became 166. Here's a big one. 130 went up to 219. But you can see where these are here. Now let's go into 2025. Looking at 2025, let's start off with our latest one. So 73,000 is the number of jobs that were created in this last report. Last month, we had 147. Now, remember, a lot of those were government jobs. They were education jobs. And look at the drop. 147 became what? 14? Right? I mean, that's a huge, huge change. Also, look at the May numbers. We started with 139. It went up to 144. And now all of a sudden it drops to 19. So these numbers, they're just, none of this is making sense. It shows, I feel like this is Whose Line Is It Anyway, right? Do you all ever see that show, the TV show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? It said where the scoring is made up. I feel like all of this data is made up. How do you go from 139, it revises up 5,000, and then all of a sudden it drops to 19,000? And then last month, 147 drops to 14,000. That is huge, huge revisions. You're talking hundreds of thousands of jobs revised down. Tremendous. Now, so if these numbers are legit, that would signal a huge problem with the labor market. And I think that this is actually, in my opinion, this is what I think traders are looking at that signaled that signaled the emergency. The Amber's got it. The score is made up and the points don't matter. All right. So because I'll tell you what, let's kind of get into this part of it. So mortgage-backed securities are currently up 58 basis points to start the day. That is, of course, a huge number. Now, yesterday I talked about locking anything closing near term unless willing to totally gamble into the data because we didn't know what this data will be, right? And that's always a good decision. I had talked about floating everything else just to keep our options open. And even if this had been negative, I don't think we would have seen as strong of a negative reaction to this as we've seen with positive. We are up close to 60 basis points. Now, take a look here. That puts us back where we were. Let me make this a little smaller so we can see the. All right, so these were our best levels. Remember at the end of June when we saw that nice ramp up in mortgage bonds, right? And at the end of June where we were at, look at this. We have gone from being middle of the road to jumping up almost to those best levels in June. Now, it's very unlikely when you see this much of a move in one day. When we jump from yesterday, we closed at 99.41, and now we're up 60 basis points. You're generally not going to see all that hit the rate sheet. But let's take a look. I mean, we were at 6.75 yesterday, which it shows, I mean, we'd really just been flat for a couple of days, right? Let's go back and look at June. Let's turn off all these things so we can go back and let's bump this to here and let's go just a little bit. Okay. So at the end of June, here, let's, May of 2025. There you go. Okay. So at the end of June, we were down 6.67 was our best level, 6.67. Now remember something. We were at 6.75. Look at where we were here. We weren't that far off anyway. So now you're going to probably see 6.65. Right. So, I mean, you're looking at an eighth of a point in rate, which is really not that high. A move this big, generally, you're looking at about a quarter point in rate improvement, but we're not likely to see a quarter point in rate improvement, especially on a Friday ahead of the weekend. You will see rates that might improve about an eighth of a point today. That should realistically, we were on June 26th, we were at 100.01. We're at 99.99. Obviously, that's about the same. And when we look at here, we were at 100.06. And when we look at where most of the rate sheets were on those days, we were right here around 6.67. So realistically, you're going to generally be down about an eighth of a point. And it really does work that way. I mean, when you see where we were at, but again, when you jump this much, you're generally not going to see all of that go to the rate sheet. Now, reprice risk on the day is low today. Even if we do lose ground, it is possible to see this number drop and we'll lose some ground today, especially because it is a summer day, summer Friday. And now that this data is in, all the trading is done. You can see we went from down here, boom, shot right up, and now we're kind of settled in. Things are kind of settled down now. So I think we will hold the gains, but even if we did like trickle, it's possible we might trickle down a little to like here on the day as it went. Even if this does happen, you're not going to see any lenders repricing worse on the day. I think it'll be fine. So you don't have to worry too much about that. Now, take a look at this 10-year treasury yield. That has dropped to 4.24. Look at the size of this candlestick right there and that drop. Yesterday we were at 4.37. Today we're at 4.25. So there's a huge drop in the 10-year. Now look at what has happened in the Fed futures and the probability of Fed rate cuts, right? This is mind-blowing to me. So we are now up over 80%. Now, every time that I refresh this screen, this number is moving higher. Let me emphasize that. This is a big deal. Every time that I have refreshed the screen over the last hour, this number has moved up. It went from yesterday, we were at a 38% probability of a rate cut in September. If you remember, markets had really reversed after the Fed meeting. Traders did not like Powell's tone. They felt it was too hawkish, and they did not see that Fed rate cuts were coming. Now, a month ago, we were at 73% expectation that we would get our first rate cut in September. Look at this. We're now over that number. But that had been dropping. A week ago, we were at a 60% chance. That had dropped down to less than 40% chance. And now that has shot all the way back up, all from this jobs report. So we have, two dissenters. And I think there's politics at play when it comes to the dissenters, because you've got Mickey Bowman, and you have Christopher Waller, and both of them have been mentioned for a possibility of being named as the next Fed chair. Now, Bowman was just given another supervisory position, but that doesn't matter. We've seen that happen before where they get one thing and then they get moved in another promotion, if you will. I think both of them, the public dissent, we haven't seen two members of the Federal Open Market Committee dissent since 1993. So you're talking 30 something years since that's happened. Normally they do disagree. They just do it behind closed doors. And then, I guess it's an unwritten rule that everyone just, looks for that continuity, that unanimous consent on a holding rate steady or Fed rate cuts, right? So looking at what we've got going on here, I think both Waller and Bowman. Now, Waller, I've seen him kind of give his views for a long time. Bowman, I feel like she is just gunning for a Fed chair job. I feel like all of the I don't feel like she's really turned as much as she has based on her own convictions. I feel like she's allowing herself to be influenced by Trump. My opinion, strictly my opinion. Because she was super, super hawkish, like super hawkish. And now all of a sudden, she's worried about the labor market getting hurt. We have not seen the inflation stuff. I think I think she is playing the game. I do. Not that it matters. But that's what I think. Waller is now Logan, wants to see Waller as the next Fed chair. And I wouldn't necessarily be against that either. I think it would be good for mortgages if he was the next Fed chair. But remember, we're not going to see mortgage rates drop tremendously unless we see all of the other stuff that has to happen. Inflation has to drop. The economy has to weaken. Labor market has to soften. The Fed cutting rates, that's going to help, right? And I've talked about this before. I put a post on Facebook, and my post on Facebook talked about how that, it's home prices that are the problem, not. Let's get to my thing here so I can show that post, right? So I put up a post here that's gotten a lot of activity about the problem is not high mortgage rates. The problem is high home prices. And the reality is that when you use a mortgage calculator, right? Your Rate Explained. Look at this amazing website. And we're going to go ahead and go to the calculator. And when you take a look at a calculator, the average home price is around $425,000, right? So, and let's say a down payment of 5%. We're not doing any, when you've got a rate of 6.75, oh, I used the commas, 0.75. There you go. Okay. So when you've got a rate of, 6.8, is close enough. You're looking at a monthly payment of $26.32.15. Right. Let's go ahead and put the insurance down to 0. And okay, so $26.32.15 is the monthly payment. $26.32.15. If we go ahead and drop this to 6% even. Now we're at 24.20, right? So 6.8, 26, 24. You're talking $200 a month. Is $200 a month a big deal? Yes, but it's less than 10% change in the payment. Now, if we were looking at 425 becoming 325, well, now you're at 1851. And that's where the biggest difference is. Remember, so that's why my whole post of home prices, even if rates fall, it's going to help consumers come to terms with where things are at. But it's almost a vanity metric more than a true affordability metric. It will help create a little bit more business, but it's not going to be a huge difference. So you got to keep that in mind. So anyway, as all of that goes, we're seeing rates creep a little bit lower. They're not going to move to like any stellar record lows. We're probably about 6 5/8 from 6 3/4. So you're probably going to see about an eighth of a point improvement in rate based on this information. I do think that we will see this hold into next week. There's no reason to expect it to move. Deb said, listen to what Powell said, though. They have two mandates. Employment is one. No one can trust the employment numbers. Maybe someone knows more than they're willing to share. You may be right. And there's talk, the Meet Kevin on YouTube talks about that Powell has insight. And that's why you try to go deeper into this data, and you try to go deeper into the numbers and take a look at what's been affected, what jobs are created. So for example, unemployment's at 4.2%, 4.2%, right here, but the participation rate has changed. So 4.2% is definitely a number, but when you look at the participation rate, we were at 6.7 in July of last year. It's down to 6.2 this year. That's a huge shift in participation, and that's kind of masking an increase in unemployment because less people saying, if they don't say that they're looking for a job, they're not considered unemployed. All right. Mike said, if two did it openly, how many did it behind the scenes? That's a great question, and that's a great question, Mike, but not enough to change the consensus. I don't believe that the Fed chair just tells everybody what to do. I believe that it is a Federal Open Market Committee. And overall, there's that one. Ron said he's glad he was wrong about the BS report prediction. Exactly. And we never know what it's going to be, Ron. So that's why, why we go there. Mike Morano said BLS data is still BS. Go figure. It really, the more you read the stuff, the more it makes you scratch your head. What will happen when QCW revises these even lower? All right. So Randy said, if we agree that Fed rate cuts do not actually mean mortgage rate cuts, why do we watch the Fed rate cuts so intently? A few reasons. Number one, Fed rate cuts are going to have a trickle effect, but it's because the 10-year Treasury mortgage-backed securities are longer-term bonds. The Fed funds rate is the shortest term that you could get. It's overnight, right? And then you've got like the 2-year, the 5-year, the 10-year, the 30-year treasuries. And you'll notice that they all do move, but not nearly as much. The reason that part of it is because of the bigger picture, right? So if the Fed is cutting rates, that's going to spur other things that are happening. That means that inflation is in check. It's funny because you would think that rate cuts themselves, they actually, like you pointed out, Randy, they're actually against what we're looking for. Because if the Fed is cutting rates, it's stimulating the economy. But if the Fed is likely to cut rates, and that's why we see the reaction ahead of time, if the Fed is considered likely to cut rates, well, that means that there's a reason that the Fed would need to cut rates, and that reason is happening now. And that's why mortgage rates themselves can, in theory, continue to work down. Does that make sense? So the idea that in December, if the Fed, I mean, look at this. We went from, expectations of maybe a cut to 2 cuts now, and maybe even 3 cuts here. This would mean that the economy is much weaker if markets believe that we would need to see 3 rate cuts. And that's why you're seeing mortgage rates that react to that now. Ron said, look at long-term chart of Fed funds rate, mortgage rates, track those over time. Yeah, because overall you're generally seeing the same behavior through all of that. So not dollar for dollar though. If the Fed cuts rates by a 1/4 point, mortgage rates don't move by a 1/4 point. If the Fed cuts rates by a point, the same reason, why did mortgage rates move up when the Fed was increasing rates? Because the Fed funds rate does affect the entire economy and all of the bonds that are there. So it's not that it has no effect at all. It's just not a direct effect. It's not a direct dollar for dollar correlation is what's to remember there. Ron said, when was the last time home values dropped 25% versus a rate drop of 1 point? I think we'll see a rate drop way before we see a housing drop. Absolutely. Plus, if housing dropped, that would create a huge economic problem like what we saw in the Great Recession back in 2008. I'm not saying that we want home prices to drop. I'm just saying that we need to recognize what really is causing these problems. And everybody is, complaining that mortgage rates need to come down. They're not going to come down that much. But I do think that if they come down some, it will spur business. Yes. But it's not going to fix the housing market and the affordability issue that people have. Government is paying more than 154,000 federal employees not to work as part of the Trump administration deferred resignation program. They get paid through September 30th, the end of the fiscal year. So yes, that would be more when they go back on the rolls. If they go on unemployment, we would see jobless claims go higher. That's when we'll see all of that tick in and have an effect. Right now, they're not on unemployment. They're not on job, so you're not seeing jobless claims, unemployment applications go up. You're not seeing any of that. So that's why what's there. Ron Siegel, you're comparing reality with dreams. Yeah, I do that so often. Ron, short-term lock. The market always overreacts. Depending on how much of it makes onto the rate sheet. So yes, let's really get into that. I'm on a straight up float for now. I don't think most of the rate sheets are going to reflect most of these gains on a Friday. I think we could see pullback at 20 basis points, and I don't think rate sheets will, all but the most aggressive pricing lenders would see any change to it. So right now, if I had to throw a guess out there, I would expect that we're seeing about a plus 30 basis point improvement actually get onto the rate sheets, even though we're up 55 basis points. So I'm not overly concerned about that this morning. But all right, my friends. Well, that's it. It was definitely a lot to talk about today, and we talked about it all. Thank you for joining me. What are y'all doing this weekend? I am still working on the barn. Let me see if I have. I only have a pic or two because I haven't really taken any pictures here. I am trying hard to get things wrapped up here in the barn. I want to be in there by September. My electricity was supposed to get done yesterday. We've had huge thunderstorms here, so part of that got taken out. But so here's the upstairs loft section, the second floor where my office will be. You can see this is rock wool insulation, and then this is 6 mil plastic vapor barrier. That's there, and you can see some cords here. That will be where my lights are going to be, and then this is tape because I had to cut the plastic and then put it up against it, and then you seal it. So you're creating a vapor barrier so that moisture doesn't get in, and you don't have condensation between warm air inside and then cold air outside in the winter. That would cause condensation on the other side of this insulation. Also, because I'm using wood all over, it would actually cause that as well. So this is to help with the issue of moisture and condensation. When you have cool air on the inside, hot air on the outside, this will help to make sure that you don't have moisture coming in and doing that. So Tebow, you're changing your deck boards to composite. I love my composite. Mini takes the Mac, 1500 Mini Coopers going across the Mackinac Bridge. That sounds fun, Tim Klyla. I hope you have a lot of fun with that. The Mackinac Bridge, is that the one that goes into Canada? Good morning, Rob Stewart. So yeah, that's it. I'm working hard. The electrician's coming on Sunday to put all the boxes in, and the barn is not going to be close to finished, but over the next week to 2 weeks, it is going to be a whole lot farther along, and I should be in there by the end of the month. I've got some September dates. I'm doing a lot of traveling. Got Jeep Invasion at the end of the month. I've got my Founders Board meeting last week of August. Then in September, I'm going to Boys Weekend out in North Dakota. But between now and then, I should be wrapped up and should be moved into the barn very, very soon. Come football season, not preseason, but football season. When does football season open? September 7th? I would say it's probably September 7th, right? Because that's a Sunday. So it'll be the Thursday, September 4th. They always open on a Thursday, but I should be in by football season. That's the goal. The goal is to be in the barn. I've got internet up there, got a lot of, but I don't have, I won't be finished. Probably won't be painted and stuff, but I'll be in there. So Mackinac Bridge goes up to the UP. Cool. Got it. Thank you. All right, my friends. Well, hey, Christy, good to see you. Hiking tomorrow, podcast recording, and going through your mom's craft room. Oh boy. So, all right, y'all. Take care, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye, everybody.